Yeah, welcome everybody to this next episode of Impact from Home. Super excited to have Felipe with us from ReNature. My name is Kathy Sabara. I'm Vice President of Net Impact Amsterdam, and I'm actually going to turn over hosting duties to Hessel, who will be our interviewer for today. So enjoy everybody, and thank you, Hessel.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, let's get started right away. It's 12 o'clock. So like Kathy said, I am Hessel, and with us today is Felipe Villela. He is the co-founder of ReNature, which is an organization promoting agroforestry based in Amsterdam, but working around the world. And yeah, we're going to have a conversation with him today. Before we get started, I just want to mention that everyone's more than welcome to ask any questions they have in the chat, and we'll try to get to answer as much as possible. Felipe, thank you for joining us. I think we're all very excited to have you here. Yeah, can you give us a short introduction about yourself and about ReNature?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hessel and Kat, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today, talking with the Net Impact Amsterdam. Funny enough, I'm from Brazil, and I know a lot of people from my home city in Brazil called Porto Alegre, which also has a Net Impact in Porto Alegre version, which is nice. And yeah, so basically, I'm from Brazil. I am now living in Amsterdam for 5 years, so ik spreek heel klein beetje Nederlands, maar geen goed. So I'll continue in English if that's okay, I hope. So basically, yeah, I come from a background working on sustainable agriculture in my mom's side, and then my dad's side comes from a banking background. So I had both kind of the sustainable agriculture, nature inclusive agriculture side of my family, and then I have the finance side of my family. So, and then yeah, I founded ReNature. I don't want to keep it too long. This just a small intro, but yeah, in general, like we started ReNature in Holland, so it's a Dutch stichting and a BV as well. So and we are based in Amsterdam. Headquarters in Havens, if some of you already know the place, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, great. So like you said, you have a family background, both in agriculture and in finance. But you ended up, yeah, or at least in my impression, focusing on agriculture. So yeah, what was the reason for that? Why agriculture and let's say conservation?
Perfect. No, that's a good question, Hansel. So basically, from my mom's side, always being passionate about nature and agriculture, and like I was exploring a lot, like the road. Like I went to Africa to do a volunteer program with conservation with elephants, wild elephants, and it was really interesting. But then when I went back to Brazil, I thought, hey, like I don't even know my. Oh, there's someone. So I basically got home and back to Brazil, and I thought, hey, I don't even know my home country. So how is it possible that I'm, exploring outside Brazil, in Africa, for instance, and then I don't even know my home country? So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the Amazon rainforest to really learn about the richness and the beauty of the nature and the agriculture in Brazil. So when I arrived in the Amazon, we spent a few weeks with some indigenous communities from Yanomami tribe inside the forest, and I was just really amazed by how they respect nature and how they preserve the forest while producing their food, fibers, medicine, and I was just really inspired to see how they are, interacting with nature. When I left the Amazon, in the borders of the Amazon, I saw this massive deforestation for soybean, cattle ranching, and logging industries. And I was really terrified by how we are, just, burning these forests and taking them down to produce our major commodities for industries. And I start questioning myself, hey, is there any other way we can produce these major commodities in a way that respects nature, in a way that includes forests? So that's how I decided to dedicate every single second of my life to search for all farmers, scientists, experts working in this field of regenerative agriculture and agroforestry, so that we can, understand what are the knowledge behind these techniques. So I went on this search throughout Brazil, but also outside Brazil, to get to know these people. And I saw there was a lot of knowledge behind this, but still it's not mainstream. Why, medium to large organizations are not using such a systems that includes nature in their design, in the agriculture production. So that's how I thought, okay, I want to do a lot of advocacy. So I went into a lot of presentations giving around. So also TEDx Amsterdam, for instance. So I basically thought, hey, I think that's not enough. I really would like to do something else. So then I went to Holland, and I met my co-founder partner Marco in one of the events of Thought for Food, which was also in Amsterdam. It's about how we can feed 9 billion people by 2050 while doing sustainably, and that's how ReNature started. So that's why agriculture for me was really the core, to see that was impacting nature. And I think there's a way to combine both, because there's always the hardcore environmentalist who says let's protect, let's leave it nature alone. And there's the hardcore farmers saying, or companies saying, we need to maximize yield and maximize profits. And there's a way in the middle that it can do both, preserve and produce at the same time. And so that's what regenerative agriculture and agroforestry allows. And that's why I was so passionate about how agriculture can actually be different.
Okay, that's very interesting. I was just thinking, but you already sort of answered it, that should I place you and ReNature as an agricultural expert or a conservation expert? But according from what I hear, that's not really the correct question here.
Yeah, I think you can call us more into the agriculture side than the environmental one, because in the end, it's agriculture has always been, before the Green Revolution after the Second World War, agriculture always has been an environmental issue as well. So it's just that we got kind of forgot that, because of in history we had this moment where we started producing all these technologies that agriculture was offering farmers to become more dependent on external inputs like agrochemicals and also even organic inputs. So now I think it's like an agricultural solution that we can offer, but it's also of course the environment included. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So as you said, you went out to search for different methods to basically protect the environment, but still have agricultural production. And that's what led to ReNature, where you work on regenerative agroforestry. Can you explain to us what regenerative agroforestry is?
Perfect. No, absolutely. So for everyone here who is watching, I think sometimes when you hear these terms, you think, oh my God, what does that mean exactly? What is regenerative, or what is agroforestry? So basically, let me start with agroforestry, because we put these two together. Agroforestry is an agricultural system that uses trees to actually fertilize the system. So the trees that we use is not they have a very kind of they have a function in that ecosystem that it has enough tree biomass and organic matter so that you can prune it and then use as a feed for the soil. So instead of bringing from outside the farm, agrochemicals or even organic inputs, you use the trees to chop them, prune them, and then you can use the wood chips in the ground to cover the crop, so that you can have a protection from the soil, and you can also fertilize the system so that that can decompose, and you can have organic matter instead of like from outside. And then also the trees allows the system to sometimes receive some shade, so that, for instance, coffee and cocoa, they are crops that they are kind of soft commodities produced worldwide, and they need shade to actually grow well. And that's something that is still haven't been done, like for many organizations like that use for chocolate or for coffee. In the end, they still use monoculture cocoa and coffee, so just one single crop. And these crops, they really like to be shaded, so you can clearly see the results of the economic benefits when you are shading the species. So that's why agroforestry component is very important, because we use trees to fulfill the need of that ecosystem in terms of fertilizers and self-sufficiency inputs, but also in providing shade for some species that requires that.
Yeah, so there's
And of
no
course,
external inputs necessary.
in the beginning, yes,
Okay.
because the ecosystem doesn't have enough, let's say, local resources to use to fertilize the soil. So you need to kind of use some organic inputs in the beginning. But then over the long term, if you know which species to plant as trees, you can actually become more self-sufficient over the long term. Yeah. And then, of course, trees actually provide so many benefits, but I don't want to list them all. But also, like, they have a really long depth root system that allows water to infiltrate better in the soil. So what happens in Holland today is that all farmers are suffering with droughts, because when rain comes, the water doesn't penetrate in the soil anymore, because it's highly compacted. And it's highly using agrochemicals, which makes the soil very hard, and because they are exposed to the sun, and then the water doesn't infiltrate because there's no space that allows this to happen, and the trees helps that as well, and then nutrient cycling. But anyway, that's enough for the agroforestry side. And then regenerative is because sustainability, it's great, we need, but it's not enough. I have a very good graph to show this exactly. I promise you will not take. It's just a very interesting slide. This is in Amazon, by the way. So for those who are curious, so this shows why regenerative is important. Regenerative is a bridge between sustainable. No, sorry, sustainability is a bridge between sustainable, so between regenerative and degenerative. Degenerative is like agricultural systems that today is only bringing negative impact in terms of soil, biodiversity, water, and social impact. And sustainability is great, we need it, but it's about reducing negative impact. It's about going carbon neutral, for instance.
Yeah.
But we have to be carbon positive. And that's what regenerative brings. Regenerative is about maximizing positive impact instead of just neutralizing negative impact. So that's why we talk about regenerative, so that we mix them both, regenerative and agroforestry.
Yeah, no, that really clears things up. It's really about improving things instead of just, making things neutral.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you mentioned that you work with coffee and cocoa, for example. And I also saw on your website that a lot of the products or crops you work with are in the tropics. So I was wondering if you could give a few case examples of some of the projects you do.
No, perfect. That's a really good question, Hessel. So we are primarily focused on countries on emerging markets like Brazil, Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, mainly because two reasons. One, deforestation rate is going really fast. So we want to create showcases that shows how we can actually produce in harmony with the forest and with nature in those locations, like palm oil, cotton, coffee, cocoa, soybean, cattle. So we are creating model farms for all these, major commodities causing negative impact on nature. And so that's why one reason. And then secondly is because they are the ones mostly producing this kind of cash crops going into the industries. So we are primarily focused on these countries, but have some good news for Europe. We are going to start working in Europe now. So we have kicked off a project in Portugal, and then we are aiming to start a dairy project in Holland as well.
That's really
because a lot of people think, hey, yeah, but cows, we don't need more cows. I'm vegetarian since I was born, and I agree, we need to go more into this vegan and vegetarian diets. It's really good, but we also need to improve what's currently happening in the dairy sector, in the cattle operations. So we're looking at a new project in Holland with a dairy or cattle farmer, a cattle rancher, so that we can also use a showcase in Holland how to operate such a regenerative agriculture landscape, because the major use of land in Holland is for dairy. So the biggest impact will be in the dairy sector. So that's why we.
Yeah, and we're getting some questions on the chat. And there's one here which kind of ties in with what I was thinking, is that thinking about agroforestry, and especially these examples about, for instance, cocoa in the Amazon, I'm thinking of some beautiful, pristine Amazon rainforest with colorful birds. And then there's maybe a few bushes of cocoa dotted around the forest floor. But of course, that's probably a bit too idealizing the situation, especially now that you mentioned you're also going to work with dairy farmers in the Netherlands. So can you kind of, sketch us a picture of what we need to imagine when we think about this? What does this look like?
No, perfect. That's a really good question, Hessel. So basically, what would look like if we do a regenerative dairy project in Holland? So basically, this means that we're going to use two different systems. One is called silvopasture, and then the second is called holistic grazing system. Silvopasture, what does it mean? It's basically using trees that has a much higher food nutrition rate than actually bringing soybean or corn from other countries, because actually the digestive system of cows and ruminants, it's much more. They are not meant to actually eat these grains. It's not healthy for them, and that's why they emit so much carbon to the atmosphere, because they are not getting grass fed and tree fed. Actually, all these cows back in the past, they used to be just their herd would go in the middle of the forest and just eat the branches, eat the leaves, eat the bark of the trees as well. And this is much higher food intake for them than actually the grains that today we import from Brazil. So for instance, willows is one species that we see often, like in Holland, everywhere next to the water. They are really large, and then they have a really it's next to the water mostly. And these trees, there was a study from Wageningen University showing that it has a much higher food intake, food nutrition than actually grass, and also the feed that they get from corn and soybeans. So the silvopasture means let's plant trees that has a higher food nutrition rate. And then the holistic grazing system is basically using the herd to rotate their pasture throughout the land. So we divide the land in for example, five different plots, and then the herd goes from one plot to the other, and then to the other, so that you can divide each land to regenerate, and then have some time to grab all the poop and the fertilizers from the cows, so that this can regenerate, and then you can go back there. Because today, all the cows, they are concentrated in one place, they poop everywhere, and then the grasses doesn't allow to grow healthy. So the rotation of the cattle is very important to regenerate the land and then keep that land fertile over the long term. So that's why these two kind of methodologies can be incorporated in the Dutch dairy sector. So we are in constant talks with dairy farmers to possibly start something, but also talking to Rabobank, Friesla Campina, and WWF to see what's possible. But we're still investigating, so it's not yet in place.
Okay, but that sounds really cool. Very innovative, at least to me. Now, we're getting some questions also more on the practicalities of exactly what it is you do, what your business is. So, for example, before you mentioned model farms, and I also noticed on your website that that's one of the big things you do. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
No, perfect. Yeah. So basically, ReNature, it is a service provider, like consultancy organization for now, which we are creating model farms and model schools. Model farms are a demonstration plot. So it's really about planting one pilot farm of, it can vary the size. So some smallholder farmers, they want a 1 hectare, for example, model farm. But we have a quite big model farm in Brazil, 1,200 hectares. As you know, Brazil has a really large size of land. So 1,200 hectares for also the cattle pilot farm. But it depends on the cash crop, because if it's cocoa, coffee, cotton, other crops, we do mostly between 1 to 10 hectares, a model farm. And this model farm, the biggest outcome that we desire on the implementation of this is basically which indicators are the most desired from the partner we have, so that we can deliver his preferences, preferable indicators. So for instance, we're working with Nespresso with coffee in Brazil. So for Nespresso, they are much more interested in the coffee that is climate resilient than actually high yield and highly production of coffee. So for them, the kind of success factors of a model farm, it means that the coffee will be climate resilient rather than showing that it's more profitable in terms of yield. So that model farm has this kind of feeling of, okay, let's develop a pilot, and then if we show the success, then we can scale that. And then what does it mean, the scale of a model farm? Then we go to the model school, which is the second service. And the model school is a education center that we host training for farmers between them, so that we can multiply this model farm for all their production units. So this farmer, where we developed the pilot coffee farm, for instance, he's like, okay, that's really, that's something we have to scale and teach other farmers. So this model school is basically a way to kind of host these farmers, and then they learn about these techniques and then about this model farm, and then they replicate that in their own farm. So that's how we can, we call this a transition strategy, to go through the transition from a conventional to regenerative agriculture.
Yes. Okay, so in these projects, I'm just trying to understand kind of the relationship. Oh, sorry.
I forgot to mention. So basically, we work with technical assistance as ReNature.
Yeah.
Also with impact measurement. So we measure the impact, for example, on carbon sequestration in the farm. We measure the impact on, for instance, the increase in biodiversity. There is this magnificent, and I love this tool called bioacoustics that you install in the farm, and you can measure how much birds, how much frogs, and all these insects are actually increasing the farm. So because just like carbon, biodiversity is becoming an asset. We have impact investors and organizations like, for instance, LVMH, the Leviton, which they really want to pay for the credits on biodiversity increase rather than just carbon, because everyone is talking about carbon market now. But biodiversity is also as important as the carbon, and water as well. So we are also working on the measurements on these impact metrics. And yes, and also we do a lot of offtake outreach, so searching for potential off-takers. So for example, we help a cooperative of cocoa farmers, and then we try to search for Tony Chocoloni or companies that can possibly purchase the crops.
Yes. Okay. That's interesting. It kind of ties into what I was thinking about the different stakeholders that you work with, because you first mentioned Nespresso, which I guess is one of your clients, but then you cooperate with their farmers, or maybe the farmers are their own entity, but then there's also these investors. So can you tell me a little bit about the relations you have with these different stakeholders?
No, that's a very good question, Hessel. Because we ReNature started as with a stichting, so as a foundation. Because our core mission, it is to support farmers through the transition phase, to going from conventional monoculture to regenerative practices. So we have now the BV as well, the business side. And the reason why we started the BV is because, you know, commercial companies like Nespresso, like Verstegen, the Dutch spices company, they came to us, you know, with the interest to develop a model farm as well. So that's why we also started the BV, the company, and then we got impact investor interested as well. So we got some, you know, 2 rounds of investment already. So we have it is split, but ReNature as a core has the mission to regenerate 1 million hectares of land by 2030, while ensuring food security for over 10 million farmers and communities as well. So that's our mission statement. So we have the foundation, who is kind of receiving, you know, like project proposals from farmers and communities, you know, from China to Africa to Brazil. So they come to us saying, hey, can you guys support us? Most of them, at least 80% of them, they have no finance and no knowledge to do that. So we as ReNature, we provide the knowledge, but we search for finance. So we search for funders and grants to enable these farmers to go through this transition. And then this is going on through the foundation, which is focused on social impact and research on the KPIs, the key performance indicators. And then we have the business side, which is doing more commercial projects with, you know, Verstegen and Nespresso, companies that wants to directly invest in their own supply chain transition. So Nespresso wants to change their coffee agricultural system. Verstegen wants to change their pepper agricultural system. So we're doing a project with them in Indonesia, for instance. So we have these 2 different kind of ways of working. So we help, you know, like from bottom up farmers who come to us asking for support, but we also help on bottom down companies to change their supply chain for agricultural systems.
Yes. Okay, that's very interesting. So there's basically 2 different streams there through which you work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So we're getting a lot of questions. I'm just trying to squeeze them all in here. Yeah, maybe an interesting one here also from Andrea is about the reception you get, for instance, from farmers, if they're at all interested or receptive to the idea of regenerative agroforestry, but perhaps also in the industries. Are the large companies, are they interested in this? Is that growing? Do you see that going anywhere?
No, perfect. That's a really good question, Andrea. And so yeah, basically, so far, when ReNature started 3 years ago, we really didn't have so much time to be so proactive. Like most of things came very reactive to us, because we pilot 2 farms, one in Brazil and one in Indonesia, and then we do a lot of like communications around these projects. So the demand started growing, and then we didn't really have the time to kind of knock the doors of farmers and organizations to go through the transition, which is great because you see that the demand is growing, but it's also we would like to have more capacity to actually also knock the doors of specific organizations which we think can be very impactful to change their supply chain. So in that sense, most of farmers we got in contact with, they already want to go through the transition. So it's not that we have to kind of experience how resistant they are. And I'm talking about 85%. The other 15, it's farmers that we actually got in contact and that they are kind of resistant. So there is still this this kind of experience for sure. But yeah, like we have been lucky enough to have a high demand on farmers who wants to do that. And the reason is because they are really being highly impacted by climate change. A lot of farmers that comes to us, they're saying that their yield is decreasing dramatically because of the climate and resilience in their crops. Just like Nespresso, now talking about corporate, Nespresso, they came to us because they said, hey, we have 1,200 farmers, coffee farmers in Brazil, in the Cerrado region. And Cerrado, some of you know, like it's close to the Amazon, it's like a biome, which is being highly desertified and dried out because of the less rain coming from the Amazon because of deforestation going too fast. So it's being really impacted by the climate change, the coffee industry there. So Nespresso really is, you know, like concerned about their own supply. So they feel like the urgency to invest in a regenerative coffee. You know, so we do experience many things from corporate world. Like some of them, they feel the pain and they want to invest in it, but some others, they are really interested because of the, you know, the boost and the trend of regenerative practices. So we are talking to many other really large organizations that, yeah, I don't want to mention their names, but you kind of feel that they, you know, they don't really, you know, like they see this is the buzz is happening and they want to follow because they don't want to be left behind as well. So there's everything, you know, there's, we talk from the marketing department, from these corporates, but also to the sustainability department. So sometimes we are lucky enough to get to the CEOs, like Verstegen, for instance. So it depends. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm watching the clock here, and I see that we have about 15 minutes left.
Oh, if you leave a Brazilian talking, it's gonna be a long. Sorry, guys.
It's an interesting topic, so I'm sure we can keep talking for hours, but I'll try to avoid that. Now we've been talking a lot about the business side, and I noticed that Marta asked an interesting question more on the practice, the agricultural sides of things. Yeah, she was asking about how when you integrate livestock with vegetable farming, if that causes any issues, for instance, when the animals start eating the crops. And I mean, that could be one example, but I was wondering if there's other practical examples where you are trying to use nature to improve the agricultural system, but nature's maybe working against you.
No, for sure. That's quite common. So, and I mean, like now that so many biodiversity have lost their habitats, they are coming to the crop fields of farmers, you know, like that's why there's so much hunting and also so much exclusion and pesticides to avoid these animals which are losing their habitats to come to their farms. So it is a challenge for sure. And so I'm just gonna, you know, share with you an interesting story from Africa. There's an agroforestry farm in Mozambique being used for to split the farm between crops that goes for the giraffes and elephants, and then crops that goes for humans, for the community there. It's like over 1,000 people in the community. So they kind of divided the farm between, okay, let's, you know, give that to nature and let's give that to people, which I think I found more efficient in the beginning, at least, so that you can kind of separate a bit in the beginning to, you know, make sure that they can also get nutrition from what we can offer. But in other cases, for instance, in Brazil, I worked in a cocoa farm, 500 hectares, which is basically has so many, it's already so, developed and mature. This agroforestry is like already 40 years old. So cocoa is yielding a lot, and you have jackfruit, you have, all different sorts of fruits and nuts. And the birds and monkeys, they come often there. And so they are all eating also this fruits and vegetables and all that. And the farmer, he's fine. He says, like, hey, like, I'm not planting for only myself. I'm planting for the coming generations from the biodiversity. So it's also a mindset perspective, like, of course, in the beginning, you don't have enough. So you think it's more like we call this between scarcity and abundance. And the mindset of abundance, like, we're gonna plant for everyone, and we work hard to make this accessible for everyone. And the scarcity mindset is like, we don't have for everyone, so this is just mine. And this is like what we have been using most in agricultural systems, excluding species from that ecosystem to say, hey, you're not welcome here. So, in my perspective, I think we can actually create an agricultural system that it can include nature. So in the beginning, you have to kind of avoid them to eat all of your crops. So you have to split. But then over the long term, when the system becomes more mature and grown, you can already kind of allow them to come more often and also benefit from it.
Okay, that's interesting. Another question. It seems like we have a few Portuguese in the chat who are very excited about you mentioning a project in Portugal. So can you tell us where that is and what the project is about?
Perfect. Yeah. So the project in Portugal is in Açores. It's a farm called Freixo do Meio. I can also send you the links later. And it's very interesting because this guy is actually working on the highly desertified area. So it's kind of like because Portugal, as you all might know, like, it's really becoming a desert quite fast. Like, the landscape there is really becoming degraded fast. So this farmer, from Germany, called Mark Leiber, he is planting an agroforestry system there so that he can regenerate this land, degraded land, and also produce a lot of different sorts of fruits. So it's kind of a more complex system, because when you talk about agroforestry, you can plant a simplified agroforestry and a very complex agroforestry. A simplified is like, 2 to 5 species or 10, but a complex agroforestry system, oh my friend, is like around 500 species. And that's a big mess, because a farmer, he's like, if you talk about to a traditional farmer, he's like, forget about it. Like, I'm not gonna do that. But this farmer, he knows he wants that. So I mean, it's better for ecosystem and nature. So he's doing that in a very complex way in Portugal. So his core mission is to plant a lot of fruits and nuts, so he can dry the fruits and then possibly sell to Tradin Organic or Eosta, or even to market as well. So yeah, so he's working on it.
Okay, that sounds really exciting. Now, I have just a few more questions, and I think, first of all, someone also mentioned how consumers are involved with this whole, your work and the agroforestry system. So can you tell us about that? Is there anything that us as consumers can do?
No, that's a really good question, Hessel. Because when you talk about agriculture and you talk about farmers, it's always far behind, like down on the road in these rural areas and with soil. So the work is really on the primary production of the whole supply chain. So we are not really close to the end of the supply chain with the consumers, and that's a challenge for us working in this field. So one, we need to share the story of the soil in a more effective way, so that consumers can be aware of where they're buying their food, but also their clothes. So I try to buy things from Patagonia and companies that I know that is coming from a regenerative source. Um, and also like a medicine. I mean, yeah, it's you know, like cosmetics as well, like Lush, Dr. Bronner's, companies that really follow the regenerative principles. So I always I think we need more volume from these farms to kind of operate in a more effective way. So we are working on getting more volume, but I think it's, as a consumer, you can visit one of these farms. There's a couple of the interesting ones in Holland that I can send you some information. There's a really interesting one called Soil Heroes in Rotterdam. There's also so Soil Heroes in Rotterdam, if you guys Google it. And then also Food Forest Ketelbroek, close to Nijmegen. And then there's a couple of other more systems in Brabant region, and then also one in the north, in Dronten, something like that. Sorry. So and then yeah, I can send a couple of a list in Holland that you can visit. So for me, I think it's very important to visit a farm, but also like be aware of where you're buying your own food. You know, so I prefer to go to market, also Ecoplaza, or even better to the Nord Market in the organic market on Saturdays. So yeah, that's how to get started. And then yeah, and then of course we are creating a new campaign for the Amazon. So the idea is to kind of because there's projects which is producing coffee, cocoa, cotton, for example, to preserve the Amazon. And then we are creating this campaign, which will be launched next year, which is the idea is like, buy a chocolate, save the Amazon. Drink a coffee, save the Amazon. So we can kind of relate more to consumers, so that there will be an e-commerce section and things like that. But that's for the future. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that sounds very interesting, especially that list, of course. If you can share it with us, we'll make sure it ends up on one of our social media channels, so everyone can go and visit. Now, I wanted to end on actually, well, probably not a great question to end on because it's going to be very big. But you mentioned before that it's one of the reasons ReNature started was that, yeah, the population of the world is growing and we need to feed everyone also in 2050. And that agroforestry can, support that. Now, I can imagine that agroforestry alone is not enough to achieve that. Do you see any other supportive mechanisms next to agroforestry which you find promising and think can help in achieving that goal?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we get that a lot from our friends from the urban agriculture, vertical farming, which is there's no one solution for the challenges we have today. So we need all sorts of systems that improves sustainability efforts. So I'm in favor of urban farming as well. Like community gardens, vertical farming, hydroponics. I'm in favor of them, but them alone, they will not solve as well like things, because we need to touch base on soil aspects. So for those who haven't watched the new documentary on Netflix called Kiss the Ground, I really recommend it. Kiss the Ground shows why we should really focus on soil and why we should focus on landscapes. So, we need to, of course, make a partnership between urban agriculture and rural agriculture, but rural agriculture is what producing and what's feeding us today. So agroforestry alone is not the only system. We need all different sorts of systems, so there's so many names, like there's regenerative agriculture, agroforestry, agroecology, permaculture, food forests, and we need all different sorts of systems that is actually improving ecosystem services, so like nature regeneration, but also making sure that it's, let's say, scalable, because there are some kind of, let's say, I'm not going to call hippie, but I will call like really hardcore, holistic approach, that it's just not gonna feed him, our growing road population. So, and what I like about agroforestry and regenerative agriculture, that it's something that you can make it a design which is replicable and scalable. So that's why I think we focus on it.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. Yeah, we're pretty much at the end of our time slot. I tried to get as much of the viewers' questions in there as possible. I'm sorry if I didn't get all of your questions. Felipe, is there anything you want to add?
I just would like to really appreciate all of you guys for this opportunity to share our vision. And I think we're all we're just one family on this planet, like there's no competition, there's no, mistakes. I mean, we got to learn from it and really put our efforts on regenerating this beautiful planet we live in. And now living in Holland for 5 years, I'm more in love with the Dutch culture as ever. And I really hope we can also deliver this message throughout the Netherlands to be able to start new projects that foster such a transition. So I would be glad to explore with you guys both the opportunity for engaging you guys to visit some regenerative farms in throughout Holland, but also on searching for possible projects where we can develop a good showcase model farm, to kind of invite the Waterschap, the water authorities, and the Ministry of Agriculture to see the future of these practices. So thank you so much, and I really hope you guys have a beautiful weekend, and looking forward to the next one.
Well, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for your time, especially waking up this early. Felipe is in Brazil at the moment. So yeah, it was very interesting talking with you. So thank you. And well, to our viewers, that was all for today. Yeah, I just want to mention that our next Impact from Home episodes will be in 2 weeks. And that time, Harry of Net Impact will be speaking with Bertrand Gacon. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, of the organization Impact. I'm butchering a lot of names here. You can find more information about that on our Eventbrite page. And that was all for today. So enjoy your afternoon and have a great weekend.
Thank
Goodbye.
you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.